The moment a man enters a woman, something profound unfolds beyond the realm of mere physicality. According to Carl Jung's psychological insights, this act is not just about passion or desire. It is a symbolic threshold where the visible mask or persona collides with the hidden side of the self, the shadow. It's here, in this intimate crossing, that the emotional truth of a man is revealed if he dares to stay in that vulnerability. For far too long, society has simplified intimacy to a mere act of gratification, a brief transaction of pleasure and release. But in the stillness of that moment, emotions swirl silently inside the man. Emotions he often doesn't confess, not to his partner, not to his friends, sometimes not even to himself. And yet, these emotions matter profoundly. Jung once declared, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This quote captures the core of why intimacy stirs something deeper in men. When a man steps into this space, he enters a psychological battlefield where archetypes awaken: the lover, the child, and the warrior, each bringing with it its own fears, longings, and inner conflicts. The first hidden layer of this experience is the paradox of power and vulnerability. In that initial moment of physical union, a man often feels a rush, a combination of triumph and pride. There is an ancient echo in his chest. He feels chosen. This act confirms his masculinity, his potency. It affirms that someone has opened themselves to him, accepted him, trusted him. That sense of being the giver of life, as old as mythology itself, rises to the surface. But almost simultaneously, vulnerability stirs. He feels exposed, fragile. What if he doesn't live up to her expectations? What if he fails to satisfy? What if she doesn't desire him tomorrow the way she does now? These unspoken doubts are not signs of immaturity. They are reflections of the human condition, shaped by the unconscious fears every man carries. This internal paradox plays out in subtle, often confusing ways. A woman might see strength in his eyes, feel the force of his passion, and believe he is fully confident. And yet, in the moments after, he might go quiet. He might reach for her a little more tightly, or retreat into silence. These actions are not random. They are responses to a silent question: am I enough? Jungian psychology gives language to these dynamics. The persona, the confident, socially acceptable version of the self, meets the shadow, the insecure, uncertain part buried deep inside. The lover archetype celebrates the desire. The child longs for affirmation. The warrior tries to control the outcome through performance. These competing forces create a psychological storm. Some men respond with bravado, loud declarations, exaggerated movements. Dominance, it's not necessarily arrogance. It's a defense mechanism, a way of covering that inner whisper. What if I disappointed her? Others lean into the vulnerability. They soften, become more emotionally present. They look into your eyes, not just to see you, but to be seen themselves. This is the man who risks being fully known. When a woman senses a man pulling away after intimacy, her mind may race with questions. Did I do something wrong? Was it just physical for him? But the deeper truth often lies not in rejection, but in emotional overload. The man may be confronting a surge of internal conflict, struggling to process both his longing for connection and his fear of inadequacy. This dance between closeness and retreat is often misinterpreted, but it is deeply rooted in the male psyche, shaped by archetypes and shadow work. If the first layer of intimacy is the tug-of-war between power and vulnerability, then the second layer is about validation. This layer dives into the unconscious need many men carry to feel that they matter. For many, the act of entering a woman unconsciously feels like proof of worth. It's more than pleasure, it's affirmation. It tells him, you are wanted, you are chosen, you are enough. This yearning for validation doesn't come from ego, but from centuries of cultural conditioning and psychological programming. In Jungian terms, it's the result of archetypes shaping his emotional blueprint. The lover within him craves a sense of affirmation. The hero wants to feel victorious, seen, and appreciated. But the shadow whispers, you're not enough. You'll be forgotten. She wasn't impressed. That's why, in those moments of intimacy, a man often reads his partner's reactions with a sensitivity he may not even realize. Her breath, her touch, the way she looks at him, these cues become his silent scoreboard. If she seems present, engaged, relaxed, it reassures him. But if she appears distracted, distant, or emotionally detached, it can strike at the heart of his identity. This deep dependence on external cues can be both human and hazardous. Jung warned us, what we fail to recognize in our unconscious will rule us. When a man does not face his own inner insecurities, he will look to his partner to resolve them for him without even knowing he's doing it. Some men will become overly attached, constantly seeking signs that they are enough. They may seem obsessive, overly concerned with performance or feedback. Others might retreat altogether, pretending they don't care. But even behind that mask of indifference is often a hunger for validation. It simply wears a different disguise. For women, this layer can be confusing. It might seem like pressure to perform or to reassure. But it's not about doing more, it's about seeing more clearly. Recognizing that, for many men, intimacy is a vulnerable ask for affirmation. He doesn't necessarily need praise, but presence. He needs to feel that the connection meant something not just physically, but emotionally and symbolically. However, it's crucial to draw a boundary here. While understanding a man's search for validation can create compassion, it should not become a burden. You are not responsible for healing the wounds he refuses to acknowledge. What you can do is meet him with presence and authenticity. Respond, not to his fear, but to his humanness, and choose whether his need for validation serves connection or fuels dependency. Jungian insight liberates us from binary thinking. Validation is natural, but when it becomes a compulsion, it traps both people in a cycle of proving rather than connecting. True intimacy emerges when both partners feel seen, not because they performed well, but because they showed up as they truly are. Beyond the search for validation lies something even more primal: the experience of bonding. The third layer of male intimacy, according to Jungian depth psychology and modern science alike, is about the biological and emotional process of dissolving boundaries. When a man enters a woman, he is not merely touching another body, he is often unconsciously forming a neurological and symbolic connection that can last far longer than the act itself. Human beings are wired for connection, and during moments of deep physical intimacy, the male body releases powerful neurochemicals like oxytocin and dopamine. These are the same chemicals responsible for parental bonding, emotional memory, and feelings of trust. Oxytocin, sometimes called the cuddle hormone, is especially potent. It creates a sense of closeness and attachment. Even if the relationship was meant to be casual, a man may convince himself that the encounter was meaningless. He may even tell others or himself that he can walk away without a trace. But the truth is, his nervous system remembers. His body encodes the experience, her scent, her voice, her skin, the way her body responded to him. These impressions stay lodged in the subconscious, forming a subtle but powerful memory loop. Jung would say that what he believes is a one-time act, in fact, be an encounter with his anima, the inner feminine that lives within every man's unconscious. This is why, despite efforts to remain detached, a man might find himself inexplicably drawn back to a woman. Not because of strategy, not because of manipulation, but because something about the experience awakened a symbolic need, one that biology alone cannot explain. He may return again and again, not even fully understanding why. It's as if a thread has been tied between him and her, one that tugs at him when he least expects it. Historically, myths and stories across cultures have mirrored this truth. Ancient Greek epics often featured warriors who journeyed far, only to long for the embrace of the woman waiting at home. In tribal rites of passage, separation from the feminine was followed by reunion, a symbolic renewal of life. These narratives aren't random. They reflect a universal pattern. Men may wander, but something deep inside them is always searching for home. However, this bond is not always healthy. If a man mistakes this attachment for ownership, he may become possessive, needing constant access to feel whole. He might confuse bonding with control. On the other hand, if he fears the depth of connection, he may flee from it, seeking shallow encounters to avoid being truly seen. In both cases, the issue isn't the woman, it's his unconscious reaction to what she has awakened in him. Jung would argue that unless a man confronts the deeper meaning of this connection, unless he integrates the anima within himself, he will be doomed to either chase or reject intimacy without understanding why. His partner becomes a mirror, reflecting not just his desire, but his longing for inner union. If he doesn't recognize this, the bond may become obsessive or distorted, trapping both partners in patterns of clinging or avoidance. For women, this can be incredibly confusing. You may ask, why does he keep coming back if he says he doesn't want anything serious? Or why can't he let go even after we've parted? The answer often lies not in strategy, but in the emotional imprint you've left on his unconscious. Knowing this doesn't mean you have to carry his emotional journey. It means you can step back with clarity, choosing whether the bond enriches your life or entangles it. While bonding may pull a man back toward a woman, what often stands in his way is the stormy intersection of fear and love. The fourth layer of intimacy is not about touch or performance, it's about the emotional aftershock that intimacy leaves behind. Many men do not speak of this struggle, but Jungian psychology insists that it is real, profound, and deeply human. In therapy rooms, conversations often begin with denial. It was just sex, or I didn't mean to get attached. But peel back the layers, and a different truth emerges. One man, reflecting on a recent intimate encounter, confessed, "I thought I could walk away untouched, but after being with her, something broke open inside me. I wasn't prepared for how much I would care or how afraid I was that she wouldn't feel the same." That inner fracture is common. On one side lies love, a feeling of connection, warmth, and emotional resonance that sneaks in quietly. On the other side is fear. Fear of being forgotten, fear of not measuring up, fear of losing control over one's own emotional state. This battle is not one of logic. It is the unconscious confronting the mirror of the soul. Many men are raised in a culture that teaches them to separate sex from emotion, to pursue pleasure without consequence, and to guard their hearts with a fortress of detachment. But as Jung would say, the unconscious does not obey the rules of society. It doesn't care what he believes or what he claims. When the anima, the inner feminine, awakens in response to a woman, something ancient and uncontrollable stirs within. And this creates a paradox. Even when a man tells himself, "This is casual," his unconscious may feel otherwise. He may feel a surge of attachment, a desire for reassurance, and a longing to know that he left a lasting imprint. That's why he might seem indifferent one day and incredibly tender the next. That's why he might ghost you, then message you unexpectedly. It's not always about games, it's about emotional dissonance. Fear manifests in many forms. There's fear of being compared to past lovers, fear of not satisfying his partner, fear that the vulnerability he showed during intimacy made him weak. Jung described these fears as part of the shadow, the hidden aspects of the self that we reject or deny. When intimacy reveals these parts, the man may panic, unsure of how to reconcile strength with tenderness. But alongside fear, love grows, not necessarily romantic love, but a deeper, soul-level recognition that something sacred has occurred. The anima doesn't respond to intention, it responds to resonance. If a woman touches that hidden part of him, he cannot easily walk away, even if he tries. This emotional push and pull explains much of the erratic behavior that follows intimacy. A man might distance himself not because he doesn't care, but because he cares more than he expected. He might feel exposed, vulnerable, even terrified. The walls he spent years building cracked open in a moment of closeness, and he now feels unsure how to repair or redefine himself. Women often misread this as manipulation or confusion. And while some men do play games, many are simply overwhelmed. Understanding this doesn't mean accepting poor behavior, but it offers a more compassionate lens. The man is torn, not between you and someone else, but between fear and love, shadow and anima. If he has the courage to face these emotions and integrate them, he can begin the process Jung called individuation, becoming a whole, authentic self. But if he denies them, he remains fragmented, chasing connection, but resisting closeness. As a woman, knowing this gives you power not to change him, but to choose how deeply you want to engage with someone still at war with his own heart. At the heart of Jungian psychology lies a fundamental idea. Intimacy isn't just an act between bodies, it's a confrontation with the self. The fifth layer of a man's emotional experience during and after intimacy deals with identity and presence. It is here that the deepest reflections take place, not through conscious thought, but through emotional resonance. What begins as physical closeness often becomes a psychological mirror. For centuries, men were taught to define themselves through conquest, through strength, dominance, and results. In ancient civilizations, a man's value was often measured by his ability to produce heirs, win battles, and assert control. Emotional vulnerability had no place in the script. Intimacy, in that worldview, was a duty, not a revelation. But the modern man lives in a very different world, one where masculinity is under constant redefinition, and where intimacy is expected to carry emotional depth. In this landscape, what a woman reflects back to a man during and after intimacy becomes a critical influence on how he sees himself. Did she see him as powerful or present? Did he feel desired or merely used? Was he truly there? Or just going through the motions? Jung spoke extensively about the persona, the mask we wear to function in society. For men, this persona often includes stoicism, control, and confidence. But beneath that mask is a more vulnerable self-wound that wants to be known and accepted. During moments of intimacy, the mask often slips, and what replaces it is a raw, unguarded version of himself. The woman's response in those moments matters more than she might ever realize. A gentle touch afterward, a smile, a word of gratitude, or simply staying close, these small acts can serve as powerful affirmations. They say, "I see you, I accept you." And for a man who just let down his armor, this can mean everything. It helps anchor his identity in something deeper than performance. It roots it in presence. On the flip side, Coldness or detachment can cut deeply if she turns away, goes silent, or dismisses the moment. It may not just bruise his ego, it may fracture his sense of self. He might leave the encounter more fragmented than before, questioning not just the relationship, but his own value as a man. Jung would call this the activation of the shadow, that inner critic that thrives on rejection and shame. This dynamic is delicate. If a man bases his identity solely on how a woman responds to him, he risks becoming emotionally dependent. He may constantly seek reassurance through future encounters, never feeling truly whole on his own. But if he ignores her presence altogether, if he treats intimacy as emotionless or transactional, he may become emotionally disconnected, even from himself. The path forward, Jung argued, is individuation, the process of becoming whole. For a man, this means holding space for both truths, recognizing the emotional impact of his partner's presence, while also grounding his identity in something deeper than external approval. For women, this layer offers a powerful insight. Your presence matters. You are not responsible for his self-worth. But the way you engage after intimacy does influence how he sees the experience and himself. Your response can either help him integrate the moment or send him deeper into confusion. This is not about pressure, it's about power. You hold a mirror. What you reflect matters. And for men, recognizing that intimacy is not just physical, but reflective, can be liberating. It allows them to move beyond performance and into authenticity. To be present, not perfect. To feel seen, not judged. This is where true intimacy lives. Not in the act itself, but in the presence that follows. By the time we reach this sixth layer of male intimacy, we're no longer just exploring fleeting emotions. We're deep within the terrain of emotional legacy. What a man experiences in those intimate moments often stretches far beyond the bedroom. It reverberates through his sense of connection, memory, even future relationships. This is the layer where intimacy leaves its imprint, not just biologically, but psychically. Jungian psychology refers to this as the symbolic impact of union. When a man is truly present during intimacy, it becomes more than an experience. It becomes a memory etched into the architecture of his inner world. Every sensation, every glance, every unspoken emotion has the potential to become a lasting symbol. And this is why some men, even years later, can still recall the way one woman made them feel, often more vividly than the details of any conversation. According to Jung, symbols have power. They act as containers for deeper truths, emotions, and unresolved questions. A woman, in the intimate space she shares, can become a symbol of warmth, of home, of wholeness. But if the experience is marred by rejection, judgment, or disconnection, she may also become a symbol of shame, failure, or inadequacy. This is why one encounter can shape a man's entire view of love, sex, and self-worth. At the sixth layer, we must also talk about emotional imprinting. Neurologically, men form memories during peak emotional states. Intimacy, particularly when coupled with vulnerability, amplifies those states. If a man is emotionally open during the act, whatever happens next tends to lodge more deeply into his unconscious. If she reaches for him, he remembers safety. If she turns away, he remembers abandonment. These emotional impressions often become the emotional filters he uses in future relationships. This can work in both beautiful and tragic ways. A man who felt truly accepted by a woman may carry that sense of worth into every future connection. But a man who felt unseen or diminished may become emotionally guarded, mistrusting the very intimacy he craves. He may avoid closeness, not because he doesn't want it, but because his inner world has associated it with pain. Women sometimes underestimate the emotional weight their actions carry after intimacy, and men, conditioned to minimize their emotional needs, often never express what hurt them or moved them. This creates a silent distortion where both partners are left confused by one another's reactions. She may think it was just a quiet moment, while he remembers it as emotional abandonment. He may say nothing, but feel everything. In Jungian terms, this distortion is the result of projection. A man who hasn't made the unconscious conscious may project his unresolved fears onto his partner. He might assume she's judging him, when in fact it's his own inner critic speaking. He might believe she doesn't care, when in truth she's simply unaware of his internal struggle. But when a man is willing to sit with these imprints, to reflect on what they mean, he begins the process of transforming experience into insight. He learns to distinguish between what was real and what was projected, between who she was and what she symbolized. This level of introspection isn't common, but it's essential for healing and growth. For women, understanding this gives space for compassion without codependence. You're not the cause of his emotional patterns, but you may be part of his story. And the way you engage, especially in the silent moments after intimacy, might echo in his memory longer than you know. Your kindness, your honesty, even your boundaries can become symbols too, not of perfection, but of authenticity. As we journey deeper into the psyche of a man during intimacy, the seventh layer brings us face to face with a vital, yet often overlooked dimension: emotional responsibility and spiritual integration. This is where the experience of union becomes not only psychological, but transformational, where a man has the opportunity to evolve or to remain emotionally stagnant. In Jungian terms, this is the point where individuation either takes root or is resisted. Intimacy has unearthed the man's shadowest fears, insecurities, longings, and now he must decide. Will he integrate what was revealed, or will he retreat behind the mask once more? Integration means choosing to acknowledge not only what he felt, but why he felt it. It means realizing that the experience wasn't just about the other person, it was about what that person activated within him. This step requires emotional maturity. And maturity, as Jung taught, begins with ownership. Until a man can say, "This is me fear, my longing, my expectation," he will continue to project those burdens onto others. For many men, this process is uncomfortable. It's far easier to externalize, to blame the partner for what went wrong, or to idolize her as the source of all emotional highs. But true integration asks him to go within, to ask, what did this connection reveal about me? Where am I still fragmented? What part of me am I being called to reclaim? And here's where the spiritual dimension emerges. Intimacy, when experienced consciously, can act as a sacred mirror. In this space, two souls meet not just to satisfy desire, but to expose truth. The man sees not only her body, but his own soul reflected in her presence. He encounters his anima, the inner feminine that Jung believed lives within every man. This part of him is intuitive, emotional, nurturing. It is often suppressed in favor of the strong, silent male persona. But in the vulnerable aftermath of intimacy that anima stirs, it calls the man to tenderness, to reflection, to wholeness. Unfortunately, many resist this call. They feel the pull of emotion, but label it as weakness. They sense the need to reflect, but choose distraction instead. As a result, the transformative power of intimacy is lost, and the cycle begins again. Shallow connection, deep confusion, emotional withdrawal. For women, this can be painful to witness. You may see glimpses of the man's emotional depth, only to watch him shut down as if nothing happened. You may feel that something profound passed between you, but he brushes it off as no big deal. This dissonance isn't about your worth. It's about his readiness, or lack thereof, to face what the moment revealed. But when a man chooses the path of responsibility, the shift is unmistakable. He may become quieter, but not distant. He may need space, but not to escape instead. To reflect, he may return to you not with grand declarations, but with a steadier presence, a more grounded heart, because he's not running from what he felt, is trying to understand it, to honor it. Jung would say this is the man on the path of individuation. He is learning that every encounter is an invitation to become more whole, more real, more himself. And when he accepts that invitation, intimacy becomes a source of evolution, not just sensation. Women, take note, you cannot force this transformation in a man, but you can recognize when it's happening. And you can choose to engage only with those willing to do the work. Because when a man brings spiritual responsibility to intimacy, the relationship stops being a question mark and starts becoming a sacred mirror for both. By now, we've traversed through layers of emotion, memory, fear, and longing, all converging in the intimate space, where a man meets both another person and himself. The eighth layer is where all the prior elements, power, vulnerability, validation, bonding, fear, identity, and emotional imprinting fuse into a new understanding. Intimacy as a gateway to authentic love and relational presence. This final, full-depth layer challenges the belief that love must grow separate from physical connection. Jung would argue otherwise. He believed that within meaningful intimacy, love often awakens precisely because the unconscious is stirred. And when the unconscious is stirred, our deepest desires, those for union, for safety, for truth, emerge from hiding. Yet for many men, love doesn't present itself gently. It arrives disguised as discomfort. The feelings that rush in after intimacy are not always romantic euphoria. More often, they are complex, disorienting, and uninvited. A man might think, I didn't want this to become serious, but then find himself replaying every look, every breath, every word shared in that moment. He may feel himself drawn toward the woman, not out of need, but out of a sense that something significant occurred, and he's not yet sure what it means. This is the moment when the heart opens, sometimes before the mind is ready. Jung would call it the confrontation between the conscious ego and the deeper self. The ego wants clarity. What is this relationship? Where's it going? But the deeper self knows that love doesn't always come with clean definitions. Sometimes it arrives simply as presence, as the sense of being profoundly seen, even if just for a moment. For men who are unprepared for this depth, the experience can feel threatening. Love means surrendering control, risking rejection, becoming visible. And visibility, especially for someone trained to stay emotionally guarded, can feel like danger. That's why some men pull away when they start to care, not because they don't feel love, but because love exposes everything they've worked hard to conceal. But for the man who dares to stay present even through the discomfort, a new possibility opens. Intimacy is no longer a performance. It becomes a sacred space where love doesn't need to be declared to be real, where the holding of a gaze, the touch of a hand, or the stillness after closeness becomes a conversation more honest than any words. This is where true relational presence begins. The man is no longer just asking, "Did I perform well, or was I enough?" Is asking, "Can I be here with all of myself, without needing to hide, to impress, or to control?" And in that asking, if the answer is yes, from both himself and his partner, then intimacy transcends roles. It becomes communion. For women, this is a powerful place. 2. You may have sensed this shift. The moments when the air becomes heavy with meaning, when your body feels like more than skin and bone. You become, for him, not a destination, but a mirror, one that reflects not just his desire, but his humanity. Your presence becomes the permission he never received to feel, to soften, to love without defense. And while not every man will be ready for this level of intimacy, those who are, those who step into it willingly, become capable of love that is rooted, conscious, and whole. They are no longer chasing validation. They are showing up, grounded in their own transformation, ready to give, not to prove, but to connect. We've now walked through the emotional labyrinth of male intimacy, key layer, peeling back a truth many men rarely voice. From vulnerability masked as strength, to the unspoken need for validation, from primal bonding to the quiet battle between fear and love. Every intimate encounter becomes a mirror, not just of desire, but of identity, memory, and transformation. Carl Jung reminded us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Intimacy is one of the most revealing mirrors of the unconscious. It doesn't lie. It brings up everything: longing, fear, shame, love, and lays it bare between two people brave enough to look. For men, embracing this depth is not weakness. It is the beginning of freedom. For women, understanding it is a gift, one that grants clarity where confusion once lived. If you found resonance in these reflections, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more Jungian insights and heart-deep conversations. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, please share it with them, because intimacy isn't just about bodies, it's about awakening two souls to truth.